This is the Local Real Estate Developer Podcast, where we break down the mindset, strategies, and partners it takes to become a developer in your own backyard. I'm your host, Kristi Kandel, and I've spent my entire career in real estate development. I believe locals have the power to shape the future of their communities, and you don't need $1 million to do it.
And I'm Raphael, a commercial real estate broker and investor. Together, we're here to remove the gatekeeping and give you clarity and confidence to take your first steps into development, no matter where you're starting from.
Each week, we'll share the stories of local developers across the country, everyday people who saw a need in their town and said, why not me?
And we'll bring in the strategic partners who help make these projects real. Brokers, architects, engineers, lenders, contractors, so you can learn how to bring your vision to life.
This is about more than just making money. We are here to empower you to build a better future, one project, one street, one community at a time. Real estate shapes every place we love or hate. The question is, who owns it? This podcast is for locals who want to own their future. This is the Local Real Estate Developer Podcast. I'm Kristi Kandel, and I believe the future of your town belongs in your hands. And today I'm joined with my co-host, Raphael. How are you doing today?
Hey, Kristi, how's it going? Great to see you as always.
Yeah, great to see you. Hey, sun's out. It's warm outside. We got true Florida weather. I'm good to go down here.
Yeah, we don't have quite Florida weather, but it's definitely been nice for the last few days, which has been good. So I think we're past the cold weather here in Kentucky. So
awesome. Well, this is the Local Real Estate Developer Podcast. So why don't we jump in and give a little bit of our backgrounds on why we're here and what we're doing? Do you want to go ahead and start?
Yeah, sure. So, just to give you guys some perspective on really how this kind of formed, obviously we've been kind of following each other on social media. I really loved what Kristi's been doing on the development side, working with a variety of different people across the country to take down different development projects. And really the idea that it's not about taking down massive projects that you see in the newspaper. It can be as simple as taking down a building that's been run down and you just want to provide new life to it. So, I think that is projects or types of projects that people can digest, and all it takes is one or two under your belt, and then you start getting more confidence, and hopefully over time you kind of pursue that as a career track if that's what you like. But as far as my background, I'm not originally from Kentucky. I was actually born in Northeast Italy. My dad was part of the Air Force. My mom's Italian, and I moved around Europe until I was about 13 years old. Went to school in Arizona and got a scholarship to go to Arizona State University to study engineering, and I minored in economics. So I was there for 4 years studying. And during that period of time, I realized that engineering was not what I wanted to do long term. I loved math and science, and I always did really well in it. But, I was a mechanical engineer to start, and all my classmates were gearheads. So they'd work on engines on the weekends and talk about how they souped up their different vehicles. And I was like, I have zero interest in doing all this stuff. So I started looking at different options to try to see if I could explore something a little bit more entrepreneurial. I've always been that way. And so I started a pasta catering company in college when I was in my sophomore year. And over that period of time, I started to, do corporate lunches and local events for different student organizations. And after college, I kind of took the leap of faith and tried to make it work. I managed a restaurant for a bit for a mentor of mine who was a financial services professional in town, but he just happened to own a restaurant. So I managed it for a while and tried to really pursue the brick and mortar route, but I realized pretty early on that it wasn't what I want to do long term. And during that period of exploration, I decided to start looking at different opportunities in the engineering and consulting space, and ultimately found an opportunity at a company called Fast Enterprises. It's a technology company that implements software systems for government agencies. And so I got hired on, got trained up in Denver, and then I lived in Washington, D.C. on a big project, and then we got moved to San Juan, Puerto Rico. My dad's half Puerto Rican, so I'm fluent in Spanish, and I was able to, not manage the project, but I was a member of the project that helped place the financial software system for the island, and then ultimately got moved to Louisville, Kentucky after Hurricane Maria hit. So, after that transitory career path, I knew I eventually wanted to kind of do something different. Consulting, and especially technical consulting, is great because it's intellectually stimulating, but the whole traveling constantly and not having something that you can kind of own and build for yourself was something that was, difficult for me. And so I decided to look at other options. I started getting into bigger pockets and found out about house hacking. So I bought a fourplex, lived in one of the units and rented out the other three. And that's what kind of gave me the courage to take a leap of faith into something different. Brokerage was something I'd been exploring for a while. First on the residential side, I didn't really appeal to my personality. And so I decided to just jump full time into commercial. And I've been in the business for about 6 years now. And first few years were very rough. I told people all the time, I think I made 13 grand my first year in brokerage. But over time, you start building up a reputation. And now we're doing very well. We have our own firm now. I've invested in a couple commercial buildings myself, and I'm looking to pursue small to medium sized development projects over the next few years. And that's kind of a brief summary. I'm also a podcaster. I've written 7 books, been on speaking circuits in the past. So just different things. I try to expand different avenues of my professional career. So that's kind of my background.
Love it. Entrepreneurs always doing multiple things, and it's never a straight line. But when you look back, what was it, Steve Jobs, who said, you can't connect the dots looking forward, but you can looking back? That's awesome. So my story also bounces around many locations. I grew up in Ohio, and we didn't have a lot of money. So owning a house that you lived in, let alone being a developer, wasn't even something that I knew was an option. After college, I ended up moving to Florida and got a job at a sign company who was putting up signs for CVS Pharmacy back when they were putting CVS's on just about every corner. And it was through that process I realized, wait, these guys are not only like building these CVS's, but they're building the shopping centers. They're building the communities. Like, whoa, what is this? And after working with them for about a year, I remember looking at one of the developers one day and going, hey, Eric, what's it take to be a developer? Thinking he would tell me, go to school, do this or that. And he looked at me and he said, for us, there in that company was in the Tampa Bay area. He said, we're looking for the right people. We'll teach you the business, but you need to be the right fit for our company. It's like, all right, cool. When are you hiring me? Because we had already worked together for a long enough time. And so 3 weeks later, I ended up joining their company. And then shortly after that, so that was 2009, that was when Family Dollar wanted to expand to California. They didn't have any locations out there, and we had already worked with them on the East Coast. So they asked us if we'd be their development partner on the West Coast. So our team said, yeah, we'll give it a shot. And I was the only one without a spouse and kids. So I was like, hey guys, I'm the lowest risk person. I'll go out, I'll open our office, I'll make sure it can work. And then you guys can all move out with your families. So ended up moving to Southern California in 2010. For the next 4 years from San Francisco to San Diego, got the chance to develop 30 Family Dollars a year. So from the time our real estate managers got the projects under contract, I then came in and did the due diligence with the city, hired the architects and engineers, went through entitlements, presented to planning commissions and city councils, did our utility consulting, permitting, and construction management. Whirlwind of a time. 60 to 80 hour weeks, but completely worth it because of the experience I was gaining. And then I had done the single tenant 1 to 2 acre developments, and I started working with a developer then in Newport Beach. And we started doing shopping centers and multifamily and industrial. And I quickly realized it's all the same steps. You just get more time and more money the bigger the project is. And it's, if you know the right questions to ask, you can define the project scope from the beginning. So you're not hit with these massive curveballs in the future. You'll still have things happen as you go through a development project, but at least you can make sure you're missing the big ones. So then after that, in 2015, I ended up starting my development and consulting company. And that then grew. 10 years later, we've team members throughout the country, built our development software. I started investing the profits into smaller multifamily, so short-term, mid-term, and long-term rentals in a couple states. And a couple years ago, I really started to think about how can this evolve into something that's more meaningful? I didn't necessarily want to build another shopping center just to make money. I wanted to start really doing things and projects that had purpose and meaning. And that's where it originally started with the freedom hacker movement. Let's teach people how to get the freedom of time, money, purpose, and relationships that I found. Well, that's a really big net to cast that's really shallow. So why don't we create something that is more focused on what I've done for nearly 20 years? And let's create a mentorship program around local real estate developers, because we have over 19,500 cities in the US that have permitting departments. Of that, over 75% are communities that have a population of less than 10,000 people. So if you can flip a house in your town, you can be a developer flipping that commercial building. uh, by creating local real estate developers, and we have our masterclass and our mentorship, and now this podcast, our whole goal is to be able to share the stories of development, to take away the gatekeeping that's there and make it to where it's as common knowledge as flipping a house or burring a property or house hacking. So that's where we got to. And then in meeting you, it just seemed like a really good fit to go, all right, I've got my partner. Let's do the podcast and see what happens.
Yeah, no, and obviously you do a great job on all the content you've created thus far, and I've had a chance to go back and see it. So I'm looking forward to the movement that we create through this, because to your point, it's extremely important, because I feel like there's a lot of people out there that are daunted by the idea of even pursuing anything in commercial. I know many people that have 10, 20, 30 doors, as an example, in residential real estate, that are still very hesitant about taking on anything in the commercial space. And it's because it's just, there's a lot of unknowns, and a lot of, not necessarily unknowns, it's just there's not the amount of information that you would typically see as you would in the residential space. Luckily, over the last few years, there's been a proliferation of people that have been producing content that's been helping people. But it's definitely one of those sections or areas of investment that still needs support, and especially when it comes to local development projects, which are more complicated than just a single tenant net lease property that you buy. Let's say Dollar General, for example. I mean, there's definitely some due diligence that takes place when you buy one of those assets. But with development, you've got, to your point, you've got the permitting process. You may have to deal with entitlements when it comes to rezoning. You may have to. There's also there's the political side, and then there's also the procedural side, right? So there's a lot of moving pieces that you really don't get an understanding of until you kind of go through the process. Mm-hmm. And I'm still a novice developer myself. I've pre-zoned several properties. A lot of the strategies that I've employed have been to buy or try to acquire properties that need to be entitled, and then identifying tenants to fit the space, and then coordinating with them to get them open for business. And so we've done that twice already, and looking to do more development projects, which would be more adaptive reuse, and one ground up construction project, hopefully in the next 2 years, with two parcels that we own next to each other that have a couple buildings on them. We'll eventually demo and do a larger construction on site. So
I love that. And you said, because there's less information out there about development, yet you still did a project. What was it for you that took you from being a broker and investor of existing assets to going, hey, let's do our first development deal? What got you over that hump?
Well, I think this is one of the reasons why I'm a big advocate for the brokerage community, is because you learn by doing, right? So I'm learning about how these deals are structured. I'm learning about how to identify good opportunities, what good opportunities look like, and I'm dealing with people who are, not all, but a lot of my clients are relatively sophisticated. So you learn from them by proxy, right, or by osmosis. I mean, I've built really good relationships with my clients, and they deem me to be a high level professional that they respect, and so I'll just shoot a conversation with them on the phone sometimes and just talk about some of the stuff that I'm doing. And so that sort of thing, when you start getting into it and you start understanding what an opportunity looks like, and the procedure to try to get something done, at some point it's just taking the leap and saying, you know what, money can be made at any point in time. So even if you make an investment and let's say it doesn't go the way you were hoping it to, you're not going to lose all your money. You may lose some of it, but at the end of the day, that's a lesson learned. And think about going to a 4-year university, spending $150,000 for tuition. I'd much rather take that money and put it into an investment and pursue and try to see what you can learn from that experience, because that can make you a lot more money, and also to make an impact in the community, which is ultimately what we're trying to advocate for.
100%. I love what you said at the very beginning. You're like, you learn by doing, to where you get real life wisdom from experience of doing the actual projects. You're never going to know it all. So just jumping in and figuring it out and knowing that you can correct course along the way is so important. Yeah. And I think that that's an area where we can fix the education that's out there. We can help make that better by sharing stories of the people who are doing it in their communities, not just me in my market, not just you in your market, but having people on who are doing it, sharing their story of how they got in the game and what they're doing now. And what I found out, I just got off the phone with someone a little bit ago, but he went in, he got into development, he realized the future it could create for him. So he started to bring in his friends and family to show them how to do it. And now he teaches people as well. And I think there's something about when we find this level of freedom that you do gain by being a developer, that you want to share it and you want to help others. And even though it seems scary and daunting, it's much more attainable than what you'd think from the outside.
Yeah. And I think in any profession, when you look at high level professionals, oftentimes if you showcase your desire to learn and take action towards those goals, they want to pour into you, because a lot of times, in all my experiences, all my mentors, all the people that I've had the benefit and privilege of having as mentors, they saw that I was committed to doing this one particular thing, and they're like, oh, this person reminds me of someone that like myself. And when you say something to someone and provide feedback and advice, and then they go implement it and say, hey, this is the results that I achieved from it, it makes you want to try to help people as well. So, it's part learning, but also part of acting and implementing what you learn. And what you'll find too, once you start getting out there, is that people want to help you. I mean, when we talked about rezoning a couple times, and going down to the planning and zoning office for my local municipality, I said, look, talk to me like I'm a second grader. Explain to me exactly what I need to do, how I need to do it. Give me some recommendations if for whatever reason I don't have contacts for certain things. And they were more than willing at the city level to be able to help me with that process. And some people are more helpful than others. But again, it's all about being resourceful and just figuring out step by step how that works, and then the documentation process thereafter, so that it becomes a process. And we love processes, so we kind of geeked out about it a little bit off the call. So.
Yes, I totally agree with you on the mentors as well. When I opened our office in California, we didn't have any team partner contacts out there. And over time, one of the civil engineers that we brought in, they specialized in entitlements and understanding that chess game, poker match, detective work that you do to navigate the entitlement process. And he took me under his wing. And I remember going into just a pre-op meeting with the city. You had all the departments that were sitting around the table with planning and building and engineering and public works and DOT and utilities. And I remember we had this conversation, we explained the project, but then we let the city staff do most of the talking. And I kept thinking, well, why isn't this guy speaking up? What is happening? What's going on? And we finished the meeting, and because I thought we were supposed to lead the charge and dictate the entire meeting. And afterwards, when we did a postmortem, he said, this is the time where I want the city, early in due diligence, I want them to tell me everything that they want on this project. I want them to keep talking with each other, because we found out different things that were happening behind the scenes with code revisions that we needed to know for our project. And he's like, they basically just gave us the whole playbook for what they truly want. So now we can come back, we can process this information, and we can better site plan this project and better create a project that fits the community in a way that as we go further in the process, we'll have staff support, but then as we present to planning commissions and city councils and make these requests, they'll see that we truly care about their community and we want to make that positive impact, not just come in, drop a building, make a $1 million+ bucks and walk away, but we want to improve the community. And over the years, he became the best mentor ever, just really helped my career. And same thing you said, when you then take action and then you come back, and like it was almost like he was training me in the field and I wasn't an employee of his. I was actually hiring him. But because I took action, I reported, I came back, and he would help me every time I hit a new roadblock. It was incredible. And I had a contractor who did the same thing, because I was also construction managing our commercial projects. And so that was so incredibly helpful. And now fast forward, there's a handful of people that I mentor, just no cost, no charge. I met them through friends, and I just started answering some of their initial questions, but then they took action and they report back. And I continue to pour in because I'm like, wait, you're taking action. Like, this is awesome to see your progress. And so much so that a couple of months ago, one of the guys, he's about to graduate college. His dad works with a friend of mine, and he's like, can we all get lunch? He's like, I just need to meet this Kristi person because I don't understand why you're pouring into my son. And it was like, it explained just that. So yes, to everyone out there, it seems scary and daunting, but it's truly not. And if you take initiative and you take action, there are so many people ready to help you.
I couldn't agree more, really. So regarding the podcast itself, let's talk a little bit about how we want to structure this going forward, so that people kind of know what to expect over the next, you know, in perpetuity as we start doing these type of podcast episodes. You want to share anything regarding, kind of the guests we plan to have on, and maybe some of the higher level topics that we're going to be discussing as well?
Yeah, so we want to tap into every aspect of development to give you exposure to it. At the same time, we're talking to local developers and their communities, and we'll bring them on as guests to do a weekly interview just to see who they are, what's their story, how they got into development, and what types of projects they're working on. Because ultimately, we want to familiarize and make you just as comfortable with development as you are with flipping a property. So we'll share their real stories. But at the same time, we'll also bring in the partners that you need for development. So we talk a lot about our 5 strategic partners being brokers, lenders, architects, engineers, contractors. And there's a whole gamut of other partners you'll have on a deal. But we'll bring in people who touch every part of the development process to help familiarize you all with what it does take to do development, so you can hear all the different perspectives. And we'll go deep on those topics. And if you want to leave comments in the notes to say, hey, I'm here on my project, I could really use help or information on this, please send it our way, and then we'll get a guest on that complies and can help with that too.
Yeah. I love that idea. And again, I think our goal is to try to profile different cool projects around the country, and not just in big communities, because obviously those always get the shine, right? You got all these big buildings in these larger metro markets, but also seeing projects from, everyday people that are just, they see a project, they keep driving by the same building for years, and they like, man, I wish this was something. I wish this was X. And they actually take action to be able to make it a reality. And then this becomes also an income producing asset that they can pass down to their kids or do whatever they need to do with it. And so, we really want to be able to create that type of environment. And the hope is that we can accumulate types of case studies from different developers and professionals, such that it becomes a repository for our guests and our listeners to access in the future. And I know we've talked about having what's known as a developer vault, where we asked our guests for different insights or types of content that they have that they'd be willing to share with our audience, whether that's a case study or PDF or whatever else at the end of each of the episodes. And so we'll try to, over time, create a repository that you all can access, and over time, hopefully build your knowledge base about the development game and take it and run with it. Because again, that's the reason why we do this. Obviously, we have our own professional lives. We do our own things, but this is kind of our way to give back and to try to create a community of people that are inspired to take on these types of projects, because it's important. And it's not, obviously, if you're in a bigger market, it's great, and we're looking forward to hearing about your projects as well. But it's even more so pronounced in smaller communities, because those don't typically get as much shine as they should.
Yep. And we've got also a school community. So SKOOL, Alex Hermosi's a business and platform that he's promoting. So we've got almost 100 people in that now. So anyone who listens to the pod and wants access to the developer vault, you'll also get access to the community. And then that's where we can share ideas and posts and forums and questions about that as well. But yeah, it's really just to break this down, remove the gatekeeping, and help everyday people realize that they can do it too.
Absolutely. And no, again, we're looking forward to hearing your all's feedback as well. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out. We want to take this time for just a brief minute or 20 minutes or 30 minutes to just kind of introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about the podcast, what to expect, and kind of give you guys perspective on our background and how we can provide some insight, but also showcase people's projects around the country. And so really excited for this journey. Kristi, thanks again for reaching out and involving me in this. I think it's going to be really great.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this.
So at the end of the day, guys, please follow along. I think it's going to be really important and impactful for you all to continue to tune in. Again, we're going to have a YouTube channel, so please like and subscribe. It does make a big impact in our ability to continue to reach as many people as possible. We'll also have a Spotify and Apple podcast, so please leave a 5-star review. Again, every time we get a 5-star review, it creates that growth in the community. We get more reach, and we ultimately can help more and more people. So please do that, and we obviously greatly appreciate the support.